What will we do with this thing? What will we do with this thing?
Lake Railroad is a standard gauge railroad. Around 1860, Congress determined that the standard gauge would be 56½ inches in between the two sets of rail. However, interesting fact about the railroad, when the Belfast and Moosehead Lake Railroad started building the tracks out of Belfast, Maine, they built to a larger gauge than standard. They built to around 60 inches in between the rail. That meant that by the time they had entered the least Maine Central, they had to rip up all the tracks they had already laid so that it would be in a standard gauge that the Maine Central trains could run on. So as soon as they finished laying track, they had to rip it all back up. A little bit of terminology. When I'm referring to things on either side of the train, since right and left can be subjective, I use the terms engineer's side of the train or conductor's side of the train. That never changes, and that just refers to the side of the engine that the engineer or the conductor would sit at. I can demonstrate which side is which for you in the coach, and Pat can do the same out in the open-air car. So this side of the train is the engineer's side, and this side is the conductor's side. At one point produced around 4,000 pounds of cheese a day, which most of that was shipped out by railroad. Funny story I like telling, the Unity Mining Company was incorporated in 1824 by a farmer who thought he had found gold in his backyard. Turns out all he found was fool's gold, but he ended up blasting away half of his backyard before he had it tested. And he didn't realize it was fool's gold until he got a letter in the mail that said all that glitters isn't necessarily gold. He did manage to sell almost $200 of shares in the company before he found that out to his friends and neighbors. Needless to say, his friends and neighbors didn't stay that way much longer. The building we're coming up to was the Turner Center Creamery. It was constructed in 1904. It's a place for farmers to bring milk and dairy products to be processed, canned, and then later shipped out on the railroad. Creamery closed in the 1950s. Conductor's side, two of which are BML boxcars, but the third, the green one, is a 1903 Russell snowplow. There's only 4 like it left in the country, and it's unique because it plows the snow to one side of the tracks rather than both sides. It's used on larger railroads where there are multiple sets of track, and you don't want to plow the snow on something you've already done. The original Unity Depot was constructed in 1880, and it was one of the last depots built by the Belfast and Moosehead Lake Railroad because they did work their way out of Belfast, Maine. why the railroad cars were passing was the Portland Packing Company. It was built in 1837. It was a cannery, and it was a place where farmers could bring locally grown produce, mainly peas, beans, and carrots, to be processed, canned, and then later shipped out on the railroad. Cannery at one time employed around 1,000 local farmers and 500 men on site. It had a large blacksmith shop where it made its own cans by hand, and a paper mill and printing press where it made its own paper labels. So the cannery was entirely self-contained. During World War II, when labor was short, the cannery utilized Jamaican migrants as well as German POWs to help offset the labor shortage. Since many of those workers were unwilling to stay on their own terms, the cannery built a large electric fence around the perimeter, and parts of that fence still exist along the edge of the railroad tracks. Side, you'll notice we're passing a large park, which is the Field of Dreams and is maintained by Unity College, America's environmental college. Many people love the Field of Dreams for its free public access to Unity Pond, as well as a mile-long walking path, tennis court, basketball court, baseball field, and soccer field. Crossing over Camp Lane, which used to be the access to the old marina here in town. The marina was constructed in the 1950s to promote the tourism industry, and it was a place where fishermen could rent boats and fishing tackle and enjoy a day out on Unity Pond. The marina closed some years ago, but it still has access to Unity if you were to take Camp Lane.
Well, I just hope he got the message.
Yeah.
This thing is not reliable.
Looks like we had a four-wheeler racing us there for a second. It's not hard to beat a 10-mile-an-hour train. When we're going over crossings, you'll notice that sometimes the engine only uses the bell to signal the crossing, and then other times the engine will use both the bell and the whistle. Under federal regulations, we're required to use both the whistle and the bell on all public crossings where there can be a significant amount of traffic. On any private crossings, we just have to use the bell to say we're coming through. The train does have the right of way, so we are coming through no matter what. A little bit of information, you'll note that when the engine blows its whistle, it has a specific pattern that it uses every time. That's actually Morse code. It's two long blasts, a short blast, and then another long blast. And that signifies the letter Q. And hear me out, but the letter Q stands for Queen. Back in the olden days in England, when trade ships were coming into, they would always play God Save the Queen as they're entering an English port. So that's our way of signaling God Save the Queen when we're pulling into a crossing. So that's why we blow the letter Q. Kind of interesting how they have two different names. Its official name is Lake Winnicott, but many of the locals prefer to call it Unity Pond because it's shorter and easier to pronounce. Many of you enjoy bird watching. I just attended a Lake Association meeting this last week. I've been informed that there are 25 loons on Unity Pond, and there's a baby loon that made it to adolescence, so technically 26. We saw almost 35 geese this morning out on the water, so there's a good chance we'll see some birds today. Although the majority of the properties around the lake are privately owned, we do have a few small public camps as well as a public park, which is maintained by the town of Unity, known as Canoculus Park. We're going right over the road that you take to get to that park, and since we're going to be going right up next to it shortly, I'll tell you more about that when we get there.
Maybe we did know where we were going.
Perhaps one of the biggest industries for both the town, the railroad, and Unity Pond was the ice harvesting industry out here on Unity Pond. That started way before the town was even incorporated, but it became a full-scale operation in 1840. And at that time, around 500 men and 250 horses worked every day in the winter to cut large blocks of ice out of the lake. The ice was stored in an ice house and then shipped by railroad to Belfast, Maine, where it was put on steamships and taken to England. Unity Pond gained the reputation of having the clearest and bluest ice in the world. It maintained that reputation all the way up into the 1950s, when the majority of households had electric refrigeration, and that's what killed off the ice harvesting industry. When you come back through after we pull into the station, you're welcome to take a look in our dining car. It has an original built-in ice box from 1914, and you can see how the ice would have been used. Now, it's in Canoculus Park. Many people enjoy the park for boating, fishing, swimming. It's also a really great place to have a picnic. The name Canoculus is native to Trestle Bridge, and on the conductor's side you can see Sandy Stream. Sandy Stream is both the in and the outflow to Unity Pond, and if you like canoeing, it's a really beautiful trip down the stream. Take you right down to the middle of Unity Main Street. caution as it goes over the bridge because this is the snapping turtle area. About a month ago actually now, we had to stop the train for a few minutes because there was a couple snapping turtles that were really slow crossing the tracks. At that time, they were laying their eggs in the rocks down here in the tracks. On the conductor's side is a small white and black sign that says 27 feet. That's known as a milepost, and that means we're 27 miles by rail out of Belfast. We're going to be making our second stop up here just shy of Prairie Road. We're about 15 minutes from Burnham Junction right now, and we're pretty much stopping at the Burnham town line, so we're not going to go all the way to Burnham Junction. So please take your seat if you're not seated already.
Station. We'll get you there by 2:30.
$15 cars and clear to the trestle, 1483, 15 and clear.
Milepost 27 eastbound.
Mile 27 eastbound.
On the the engineer's side of the train, you may have noticed a small building with a sign on it that said Winnicook Station. There was originally a station in between Unity and Burnham Junction.
Clear, 12 and clear to the trestle.
The original building has been torn down and is currently private property, but the current owners decided to, I guess, honor the memory of the station by putting up a sign on their shed. Winnicook Station was used primarily for passengers getting off at one of the many camps here in Unity Pond. The railroad thought it would be a good idea to funnel all the traffic in.
8 cars,
People going to the pond into one station, rather than have people go to Burnham, maybe Unity, maybe before that just to get to Unity Pond. Some of the camps are utilized out here. We have Camp Winnicook for boys. It's an interesting camp. You can send your son there along with $6, and you would stay there all summer. You get room and board, and learn wilderness survival skills, and probably spend
one
every day
car,
out on the
bridge
lake.
is clear.
Interesting deal. In 1880, Windermere opened. Windermere Park was on the other end of the lake, and the park was divided in half. Half of it was for, you might say, a place for the rich and famous. They had a fine dining lodge. We offered activities such as golf there. But the other half of Windermere Park was for the ordinary man. You could stay at the hotel there for $1 a night, and they built cabins out on Unity Pond that you could buy for $10 a piece. I believe the property taxes have raised a little bit since then. Back then, that's what $10 could buy you. A little bit of information about the train you're currently on. I don't know how many folks got a really good look at the engine, but it's a GP9, a general purpose 9. It's the only GP9 operating in the state of Maine, and there are 2 others in the state, but they're both scheduled to be scrapped before the end of this year. So pretty soon it'll be the only GP9 in Maine. It weighs 124 tons and has 16 cylinders, which put out 1,750 horsepower. It's rated at 70 miles an hour, but we're not going 70 miles an hour today if you haven't guessed. We got it from Minnesota up in Rail America.
Clear. 8 cars.
The open air car was converted from a single-loaded flat car to a first open air car in the 1990s. And coach 3248, the maroon coach, was built in 1924 by the Coleman Car Company. It's kind of unique because right after it was purchased, it was completely reconfigured for intercity rail. The frame was strengthened, the concrete was laid over the floor, so that it could go at speeds of
I believe it was
was 67,000 this last year. We have a platform here on the railroad, so we shuttle people to and from the fair. We're going to get another engine running, and we're running a train at Stevens Fairgrounds in 1830, and it was horse racing at that time. In 1942, it was converted to stock car racing. We'll look forward to that happening.
Wow. Oh, it's older power. Pigeons and garbage and scrap on there. What's going on in the air today? They got locomotive at the shop.